Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 36 for Monday, October 20th. My name is Farbod Markazi. I'm here with Jace Hatfield, as always. We have our Week 8 preview recap show for everyone today. Not the preview, the recap. A lot of things happened yesterday. Number 2 lost, number 5 lost, number 7 lost, number 10 lost, 11, 20, 22, 23, 25 lost yesterday. Why are we still listening to the AP poll? Because it clearly does not know things anymore. Jace, how are we doing? We both just got back from NFL games.
Yeah, this will be our tired but exciting show. Came back from NFL games here in Chicago, got more sun than expected at the game, which was a nice surprise. Got Portillo's after.
I personally got back from SoFi. We went to the Chargers getting drubbed by the Colts, but in California, you're kind of expecting the sun. I don't know how you guys are in Chicago. You said you got the Italian beef?
Hot peppers, a little bit of cheese sauce on top. It was perfect. It's the Portillo special.
But by the way, I had a lot of fun at SoFi. I had a lot of fun watching the NFL, but it makes me thankful that we are talking college football because there's just a lot more random, crazy bullshit that happens every day. There's a lot of things that happen today, by the way, in terms of our recording. And I'm glad we're doing it later in the day because Billy Napier got fired. We got to talk about Georgia, Ole Miss yesterday's Lane Kiffin heading to Florida after losing to Georgia yesterday. There's a lot of things to talk about before we get into it. Make sure you are following us on TikTok at flag4 discussion, Twitter at F4 discussion. We are on YouTube at Flag for Discussion spelled out, and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast at Flag for Discussion. I am coming off a little bit of a buzz, so this is gonna be an extra fun podcast for me. I think we might have some. You might need to steer me in the right direction, but let's get into it. Let's get into our Georgia Ole Miss recap. Obviously, Georgia came back. They beat Ole Miss 43-35. For a lot of that game on my end yesterday, I felt that Georgia was going to lose. I felt that it was going to be shot for shot. It was going to be a shootout. One, I get one, you get one. But it felt like Ole Miss's offense had much less trepidation and much less trouble getting downfield than Georgia's offense did. I felt like Georgia's offense, it was just a little bit harder every time that they wanted to do it. I mean, it was 35-26, and you saw the look on Kirby Smart's face in the third quarter. You felt like the game was over. How did that happen?
It felt like a repeat of the Tennessee game where Tennessee kind of got up early, looked like they had all the momentum. Yeah, and then Georgia stormed back. We talked about like one of our keys to the game was Georgia starting off hot because they've started just notoriously cold every game this year. The defense again started off cold. Ole Miss's first 5 drives were all touchdowns, and then on the Georgia side, they started hot with the football, but they were unable to stop Ole Miss until the fourth quarter. Their drives, when you just look at them, so here's Ole Miss's 8 drives: touchdown, 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 punt, punt, downs. And then Georgia's is field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal. So not a lot of defense to be played. It's a good thing Georgia's offense showed up for 4 quarters instead of the usual 3.5, 2.5 kind of quarters somewhere in there. And then I thought interesting for Ole Miss, and this is exactly the same game script that happened, I think, why Tennessee lost. They didn't have much of a run game against Georgia, which, I mean, when you have a good defense like Georgia, that happens. Later in the game, in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss had 1 rushing play, just 1. Everything else was an incomplete pass or a complete but short pass. I thought that they tried to play Trinidad hero ball for too long. Number one, it's just hard to play hero ball for much more than a couple drives, especially against a team like Georgia. Number two, they were doing it for, at that point, it felt like the last 70 snaps of that game had been hero ball from Trinidad. I think the kid was just tired. They didn't have a run game in the fourth quarter, and they just looked kind of dead on offense. Everybody watching him run around. Meanwhile, Georgia just kind of had the offense rolling. They were able to run the ball with multiple backs and with Gunnar Stockton. They had the short passing game working with Zachariah Branch. They even found some magic in their tight end. Lucky, he caught his first, second, and third touchdown pass of the season in this game. So I thought Georgia had a much more methodical, consistent offense that carried late into the game, whereas Ole Miss looked like they were playing hero ball. And I mean, at some point, poor kid just gets tired.
Which is funny because if you asked me how I felt about the teams in the first 2 quarters, it would have been the reverse. I felt like Georgia was trying to make some things happen that just weren't there, or Gunnar Stockton saw the tight end. There were multiple plays that on replay show the tight end or a wide receiver wide open downfield, and Gunnar Stockton either missed him, didn't see him, and ran out, or Gunnar Stockton tried to hit him and he overshot him by like maybe 15 feet. Hey, if you told me that it would be too much Trinidad hero ball compared to Georgia hero ball in the fourth quarter, I would have been like, well, how? There's just no chance. I thought in the third quarter they had the game. I don't know if you were listening to that game, watching that game with the broadcaster sound on, with the audio on. But when Georgia got a stop in the fourth quarter, I think the broadcasters, it was Herbstreit and what's his name, Fowler. And they were like, Lord have mercy, Georgia has finally gotten a stop. It was like the first time Georgia finally got like no field goal, no touchdown for Ole Miss. When you say that about touchdowns. A team, yeah. When you say that about a team, you just assume that team is crushing them. But that's not how it happened, right? No, it was, I got to give Gunnar Stockton a lot of credit. I honestly watched the first 2 quarters of that game with zero faith that he was going to be able to lead them to a victory. I thought Trinidad looked really good, and I thought Lane Kiffin had a really special offense, as we're used to with Lane. But every play seemed 6-7 yards past. Trinidad was throwing lasers. That's why I just thought the game was over, because I didn't think that, as good as Georgia was, I thought Trinidad was like, it was just too easy for Ole Miss. Like, no matter how good Georgia's defense was, we had a text chain about Georgia's defense falling off a little bit yesterday during the game. I don't know. I'm just surprised at how quickly things shifted, because for me, I thought it was much easier for Ole Miss to move the ball and harder for Georgia to get things done, despite it being a shootout. And all of a sudden, it just flipped. And maybe that's credit to Georgia and Kirby Smart. I just said going into this game on our preview show that this was going to be a Kirby Smart special, and it didn't feel like that. It felt like anything but a Kirby Smart special with how their defense was playing.
Yeah, if you listen how many plays Ole Miss had in each touchdown drive. First touchdown drive of the game, 14 plays. Second one, 10. Third one, 11 plays. Then a 2-play, and then right at the end of the third quarter, a 12 play. So they were just moving the ball methodically down the field. They weren't rushing for like chunks, but it was 3-4 yard run. And then Trinidad, if he was to scramble, it was another 4 or 5. And then it was completions anywhere from like 6 to 12 yards. They just moved the ball so methodically. And I think in the fourth quarter, when they abandoned the run, the momentum, especially when you play Georgia, like the first drive, they had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. They go 3 and out in 19 seconds. And then Georgia goes down 9 play, 67-yard touchdown to go up 40-35. And then Ole Miss, 3 plays, 1 yard, 50 seconds. And then Georgia, at this point, your defense is tired. Georgia had a 12-play, 75-yard drive touchdown in the end of the third quarter. They have the 3 and out we just mentioned, then the 9-play touchdown drive we just mentioned, and then the 3 and out again, putting Georgia back on there for another 10-play, 66-yard drive to then have Ole Miss come out in the 38-second drive that ends up with a turnover on downs, giving Georgia the ball to end the game. I think when you abandon the run like that and you run the risk of a quick 3 and out the way that they did twice, your defense is just so gassed, especially after the score was 35-33 going into the fourth quarter. They were already gassed regardless of 3 and outs. And I think those 3 and outs just kind of exasperated it. And those 3 and outs were also brought on by, a little bit too much hero ball and just the lack of even an effort to run the football, not trying to waste any clock, not giving your defense any time to breathe. Georgia won the fourth quarter 17-0, and that was more than the difference in this game. So I think props to Kirby Smart and Georgia. Just keep fighting, keep hanging in there until they got a chance to throw a punch.
Yeah, that's props to them. Part of that might have been because they were home, so they had the extra juice. They didn't have to travel. Part of it might have been just because, for what it's worth, we always expect a good defense out of Kirby. We always expect just a disciplined team out of Kirby. But this year, that's been hit or miss. One thing we can expect out of Kirby is that his team will not quit, and his team stayed in it. And you said it going into the preview show. You said Georgia, if they start slow, they have shown the ability to bounce back. They've done it against Alabama. They fell short in the end of it. They did it against Tennessee. They won the game. This time it was they fell behind in the third quarter. Like, they were shot for shot with Ole Miss, and they finally fell behind. At that point, I thought it was over. Kirby Smart and his team definitely didn't. So you got to give them kudos for that. What does this mean going forward? I'm looking at the conference standings right now. Alabama, Texas A&M are the lone undefeated teams in the SEC in terms of conference wins. I know Alabama lost to FSU, but that has no bearing on whether or not they make the SEC championship. They're still going into next week without a conference loss. So they should be your favorites to make the SEC title game. Ole Miss and Georgia and about 4 other teams are sitting there with 1 conference loss, and then finally starting to even out a little bit. There are some more two-loss teams, and it's starting to make a little bit more sense. LSU, Tennessee, they're falling down a little bit. What does this mean for each program, do you think?
Yeah, Georgia goes at Florida. Billy Napier lists Florida. I think I feel really good about Georgia in that spot, just given we'll talk more about, Billy Napier and what the coaching situation with kids entering the portal, but you factor that in. They got at Mississippi State. You got to feel good about that. And then they get Texas at home. Beginning of the season, that was a huge game. I feel comfortable about Georgia there. They end the year with a fun game at Georgia Tech, but that won't impact their standings. I have to assume Georgia, let's chalk it up. Georgia finishes 3-0. They went out in the SEC. And then Ole Miss, they got at Oklahoma next week. That'll be a really fun game. But then after that, they have a winnable schedule with South Carolina, Florida, and Mississippi State as well. So if you end up in a world where both of them have 1 loss, that would be devastating if they both missed out on the SEC playoff. Unless Texas A&M plays Alabama, they don't. Ooh, all right. So yeah, Georgia and Ole Miss, they don't. Winning out would put both of them in the playoff, but it might not put them in the SEC championship game, which would be interesting. So Alabama and Texas A&M hold their destiny currently, with Ole Miss losing.
100%. Alabama, Texas A&M. I have a question for you, actually. Alabama, Texas A&M, they went out. One of them was in the conference title game. They both get into the playoff. Georgia, Ole Miss. I know technically, mathematically, matchup-wise, this probably can't happen. Georgia, Ole Miss, they win out. Then how much can we say it's SEC bias, or that these teams just deserve to get in? If the SEC gets like 6 teams in because they had 2 conference losses against the best in the country, how much can we even say that that's, what we've been talking about, like SEC bias?
I feel like that's a question that I can only answer if I see the resume, because there's so many. I try not to put a blanket on when it's by SEC bias or when it's not. Or if they try and pawn off a 2 or 3 loss LSU team who has 0 quality wins and put them in the playoff, okay, that's crazy SEC bias. If any other team in the country had 0 impressive wins, 0 quality wins, and just consistently lost any meaningful game they played, and they weren't in SEC, we'd be like, what are they even doing? Are we sure we even want them to play in the Tony the Tiger Bowl? So if it was something like that, I would maybe lean towards. But if you're telling me like a 10-2 Missouri, with their only losses being Alabama and Georgia, and they have a ranked win or 2 in there, I would be good with a 2-loss SEC team in that regard. I do think a 2-loss SEC team could be more valuable than a 2-loss Big Ten team. For instance, if Michigan was to run the table, I think I would take an SEC team over that. But I guess that would also mean Michigan would have beaten Ohio State. So we'll have to see. Time will tell. That's going to be the question, though.
That's a really good question in general, because I know I'm straying away from our topic, but I'm looking at the ACC standings. Georgia Tech's leading the way in the ACC with 4-0. Virginia's at 3-0 in the conference, and SMU's 3-0. Pitt, Duke are 3-1. Louisville, Cal 2-1. There is a world where Georgia Tech goes out, wins the conference, and either Virginia or SMU are like a 10-2 or 10-1 in conference, 9-1 in conference, and one of them gets left out because of a 10-2 Mizzou. And I think that's just a world that we need to be prepared for, because a lot of people want to talk about SEC bias. it's just, if you really ask me right now, would I rather have Virginia in the playoff or Mizzou? I think that answer is pretty obvious, and it has nothing to do necessarily with conference. It's more how good I've seen the teams play.
Yeah, I agree with that. And typically, when you stack up SEC versus other conferences, the SEC tends to come out on top. There's a couple games that you can nitpick and talk about. Oh, SEC struggled in bowl games with this and that's fine. But in the regular season matchups, when SEC goes and plays other conferences, the SEC usually comes out on top. And I think the SEC bias, there are times where it comes into play, and there are times where it's a very fair case to make. I've definitely been there before. But at the end of the day, if you want that bias to stop, somebody has to start dethroning the SEC consistently. Sure, the Big Ten has last two national champions, but the SEC still has the best head-to-head record against all the other conferences individually and collectively. Until that pendulum shifts, I don't see a world where we can like kill the SEC bias once and for all, as real as it might be at times.
I just want to point out one thing, and it's not to toot our own horn, but we didn't start talking playoffs week 1. So every other show that we got pissed at, like, just enjoy college football, it's week 8. We can start talking playoffs, and we're actually talking about it when it matters. So a shout out our podcast. Let's get into our picks, because it wasn't a phenomenal week for either of us. But Jace, do you want to break it down for everybody?
Yeah, it was basically the same thing that happened last week. So we had 10 games. I'll just spitball them all here. I'll just say them now too. I went 4-6 on the week, so not great. I am now 27-1, a little perfectly 500 there, thanks to an Alabama push against Mizzou. And then Farbode, you went 5-5 on the week. You're now at 28-16-1, so still having a phenomenal stretch.
No, or sorry, 33-21,
21-1. Still on a phenomenal stretch here. You're still 12 games over 500. Maybe the 10 games we just put in less effort on each, and we're not quite as good at picking. So either we need to pick them sooner and go dive into all 10 games, or we'll have to figure something out. But we've just been so extremely mid picking 10 games. We'll see what we can do here. So first game we picked, Ole Miss, number 5 Ole Miss at number 9 Georgia. We do it by spreads. Georgia was 7.5-point favorites. Farbode, you were on the right end with that, with Georgia. Very unfortunately, I was on Ole Miss.
Last second.
Looked like they had that. Even when I was like, oh, Ole Miss might lose, I didn't think they were going to lose by 8. So to lose by that half point was tough. In similar fashion, USC at Notre Dame. Notre Dame 9.5-point favorites. Notre Dame wins by 10. You were also on the right end of that one. You had Notre Dame. I had USC. Tough to go 0-2 by a combined single point. Hate to see that.
Yeah.
I'll pause there if you have any USC Notre Dame takeaways that you want to give for the listeners.
We'll get into the rest of the game breakdowns. This whole week, though, a lot of the morning picks we had, I think we had 3 or 4 picks, and I think I started at 3 or 4, and I was just looking around like, I could have a really cool week, and then I ended up 5-5.
There's just no way. Whenever you whenever you're like, oh, I'm doing well, it never goes well. Or on the flip side, there's times where I'm going to be 0-10. And then it turns around and you end up like getting 4 in a row at the end of the day, and it turns around. I think that was me this week. Game we were both wrong on. We were both on Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama minus 8.5. They look dominant. We'll talk a little bit more about that one, but yeah, they looked really good. LSU at Vandy. Vandy being minus 2.5. We were both very comfortably on Vandy. In hindsight, probably should have also put that in the flag for discussion 4 leg, but next week we'll think a little bit more about that one. Vandy handles LSU comfortably. LSU still struggles to beat anybody with a pulse. Washington at Michigan. Michigan 5.5-point favorites. It was a close game up until a couple of Damon Williams interceptions. Michigan pulls away pretty handedly with a big win. Covering for you. You had Michigan. I had Washington there. Game number 6, Penn State at Iowa. Iowa 2.5-point favorites. We had both said we had no idea what to expect out of this game. We both went with Iowa, thinking maybe with the James Franklin situation. But Penn State came away and got a big win. Good for them. You like to see that, but unfortunately to the demise of James Franklin. Was that the game where Iowa barely briefly won?
Iowa won by 1. Penn State covered, though. So that's where Penn State won.
Penn State covered, Iowa win. And then you have Utah, game number 7, Utah at BYU. It was a great game, a great fourth quarter, a little bit more of a snooze fest until then. BYU comes out on top, so they get the cover as well. I had BYU, you had Utah in that game. We'll talk about this too, but BYU not really being talked about much as a whole, and they're undefeated. Also
True
undefeated
freshman
in conference
quarterback.
play, obviously. So yeah, number 47. Just the worst QB number you've ever seen. It looks like they're running a fake punt every play, and I don't like it.
It's pretty elite. I love it. I don't like it, but I love it.
Yeah, it's like I remember the first time I watched it, there was like 4 or 5 times like they just do a fake punt on third down. Oh no, that's the quarterback. And then 8th game we picked was Mizzou at Auburn. Mizzou came away with the win. I was on Missouri. You were on Auburn. We'll talk about the coaching situations, but there's a potential goodbye that happened in that game. And then to finish this out, number 9, Texas Tech at ASU. We were both on Texas Tech. Kenny Dillingham gave it to us. ASU comes out with a win as 7.5-point dogs. Good for them. And then number 10, last game, number 12, Georgia Tech goes to Duke. We both were on Georgia Tech, now ranked in the top 10. Georgia Tech came away with a win. They look really good. So like I said, I'm now 27-1. Barbode, you are still comfortably over 500 at 33-21.
I'm just disappointed that the game I picked last week as my most comfortable cover was Texas Tech minus 7.5 over ASU, and ASU won outright. Like, I mean, I should have given Kenny Dillingham a lot more credit. I respect the hell out of that guy in ASU's program, but should have won. Should have covered a little bit. Should have given them a little bit more respect. Let's do the shot in the bar. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Is Texas Tech hadn't won a game by less than 3 scores, I think, all season.
Of course,
and then they
the one time
lose this one outright.
We pick them.
Yeah. Let's do shot in the bar. We don't need to go over the parlay. I'll do a quick recap of the parlay. We went over 4 as our worst parlay yet, so wait up till our next show where we will finally hit on a parlay again. But why don't you go over on the shot in the bar?
Yeah, you had a big one. You had SMU plus 9.5 at Clemson. Outright W. Dabo, man, just struggling. But great for Rhett Lashley and SMU. On the road, getting a big win. So you're up to 7 points now. Your outright winners were SMU to give you 3, USF to give you 3, and then Sparty gave you a point on a cover earlier this year. So you're sitting on top now. That you've dethroned me. You've got the lead on both the pick'em and the shot in the park at 7 points. I had USC plus 9.5 at Notre Dame. I thought the cover was safe. Of course, it wasn't. It was a 10-point game. I'm still at 5 points. Toledo and UAB giving me single digits, and then Stanford with a 3-point cover a few weeks back as well. Flag for discussion, 4-legger. 0 for 4. Don't need to say much more than that. We will be better, I promise. Moving to the next segment.
I thought SMU Clemson. I said it on the show with Cade Klubnik. I thought SMU could get the outright win instead of just the cover. And then mid-game, I was like, oh, wait, that's not Cade Klubnik. Who's quarterback for Clemson? And then I go on the Clemson boards, and there's Clemson fans who are asking Cade to take the rest of his Clemson career off because they like the backup quarterback more. So
he looks good.
At that point, I was like, I guess I'll take the 3 points. It wasn't because the backup quarterback was in it. Clemson fans love that guy. On that note, let's get into cleanup crew. Those were our picks. We'll get better next week, I promise. We're going to clean up what happened the rest of the week, the rest of the Saturday. First of all, I want to start with Alabama. They controlled Tennessee 37-20. Ty Simpson looked unbelievable. I saw a video of his dad, who's the coach at UT Martin, who made it to the game, and he was just recording Ty jumping into the stands with a cigar in his mouth to hug his mom. I love that. I was like, that guy has his priorities in order. He's got a cigar and got to go say hi to his mom.
He's everything
like you were about that
quarterback. That would be you.
You too. You can join the squad. But yeah, exactly. Probably right. No, that game was honestly a complete different game than you and I expected. You and I both picked Tennessee to cover the 8.5. We both said Alabama's going to win, but Tennessee's going to cover. Alabama looks scary right now.
Yeah, are they in a tier of their own in the SEC? Like, even though they're tied with Texas A&M, they feel like
I think you got to consider that, right? Yeah, the Texas A&M has been elite. Texas A&M has been elite. They beat Notre Dame. They've beaten a lot of good teams, but they also gave up 42 to Arkansas on Saturday. They gave up They've been in a lot closer games. Alabama's gone into Athens and they beat Georgia. They played a good Vandy team. They beat them at home, and now they play Tennessee, who played one score to Georgia too. Tennessee's been right there with the best teams in the SEC. You're right. I think Alabama's in a tier of their own in the SEC.
Yeah, they looked so dominant. Out of the week one, I feel bad for them in the sense that Florida State struggling as much as they have is going to negatively impact the viewpoint of Alabama, and it's going to make that loss probably look worse than it actually is. It was a week one blunder, new quarterback. Ever since then, they have been on a warpath, and they have some very impressive wins. They have a very impressive resume. I think they're the best team in the SEC. If you're tiering the SEC right now, I would have tier 1 Alabama and then nobody else with them, and then I'd jump down to tier 2. That's just how good they have looked and how confident I am in their ability to run the table here moving forward.
How much do you give credit to the Black Hoodie of Death?
To the what? Oh, I was like, what? If it works, if it works, keep wearing it. Yeah. No offense to our program. If it was Oregon, I could maybe get it because we don't have 7 national championships in the last 15 years or whatever the hell it is. So just it's wild.
Hey, you gotta appease your head coach. Long story short, more serious, you're absolutely right. I think on any given week, anyone in the SEC could beat Alabama. But if you gave me Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb game planning with Ty Simpson, who's honestly week in, week out has looked like the best quarterback in the country. We keep talking about Dante Moore, we keep talking about DeMond Williams, Fernando Mendoza. They've all been elite. They've all been really good, and you give them all the credit. Ty Simpson out after Florida State has looked like the best quarterback in the country and has not slowed down. I think you could convince me Georgia would beat them in a single game, or you could convince me Notre Dame might go up toe-to-toe against them. I think in a big game, there's no one right now in the SEC I would take other than Kalen DeBoer's Alabama. You're right.
Completely agree. Yeah. If every team played their average football moving forward, I don't know if I would take Alabama, but if every team played at their ceiling, I would take Alabama over anybody in the SEC.
Right. I just mentioned Notre Dame. Let's clean up their game. They just went on and beat USC at home 34-24. Somehow Vegas gets it perfect. Notre Dame was 9.5-point favorites. I took Notre Dame, but I personally don't like the fact that I took them by that many points, and they win by 10. So I'm just going to celebrate the fact that I got the win. Hey, that was the last one. You have it written down in our doc. Rough ending to the series for USC. Makai Lemon didn't score. Jeremiah overall played fine. The run game overall was fine. Going into like the second quarter, I might have texted you, but I know for a fact, like in my head, what I was thinking was it's kind of the same thing that I was thinking with USC, with Ole Miss Georgia. I was thinking USC's offensive drives are too easy. They're just messing up a little bit. Like they're getting to the 20, and then once it gets tight down there, then like Jeremiah makes a mistake. They miss a kick. Like that's where like trouble happens. But I was like, if they can get down there, they're going to eventually outpace Notre Dame, because Notre Dame at first was slow to start. Then other than the 7-7 tie, obviously, and then all of a sudden Notre Dame's defense decided to show up, and that was the story for me. It was like Notre Dame said, "Oh no, here we are," and you guys did make a statement program win under Lincoln Riley last week against Michigan, but we are a step above. That's how it felt to me.
I agree. I think Notre Dame did what Notre Dame football wants to do, and that's like, we are bigger and better than you, and we're going to run it over you. I don't even remember the total yardage. I think between Price and Love, their all-purpose yards were almost 500. I think it was like 240 and 220 or something ridiculous like that. To have two guys put up almost 500 yards of offense on you, there's a lot. That's effort, that is coaching, that is execution, that is game plan. So props to Notre Dame on their end, because everything I just mentioned, that's them doing a good job of it. If you're USC, that would make me nervous. They have a date in Eugene coming up. You just saw the Ducks put up 750 yards of offense in 2.5 quarters. And then you see your own team get just ran all over, up, right, down, left, center, any direction you can think of by Notre Dame. That can't give you a lot of confidence if you want to play in that football game and hang around. I think, to your point too, USC moved the ball well. I'll say this, it's pouring rain. I don't think you want to try to limit the amount of lateral and backwards throws of the football when it's pouring rain. And USC, for some reason, thought that now is the time to have my running back lateral it to my wide receiver, who's then going to shovel pass it to my tight end. Like, what? Just they would draw. They had chances to come back, win, or at least put themselves into, within 3 points of that football game, and they just kept making bonehead mistakes. And I was talking to my fiance about this while we were watching it. Something that she loves about watching the Lions games, other than me being a fan of them, is she loves their trick plays, and she always comments how they execute them so that they're really well designed, but they're executed perfectly. And I'm like, honestly, the advantages of that are, one, like taking them seriously. You practice them so much that you run them perfectly, and everybody knows. Everybody has a contingency plan, or if my wide receiver is going to throw the football and no one's open, here's what you do and here's how you get out of it. USC didn't have contingency plans in their trick plays. You could tell they had run them a few times. Everybody knew what's supposed to do when everything goes right, but nobody knew what to do when they would go wrong, and they went wrong, and they just panicked. Wide receiver throws the ball backwards. It was pandemonium, and also it is pouring rain. The Lions do it, they do it in a dome. They don't do it when it's pouring rain in the Midwest. It's, going sideways, like down 10 points, needing a score late. So I think that was also just bad play calling, bad coaching, bad execution by USC late in that game.
I just don't know if Lincoln just thought he couldn't run between the tackles, or because last week King Miller and Wayman Jordan,
well all season.
They combined for like 250 yards. And USC's defense at the beginning of the game was stellar. They gave up points, sure, but they were getting in the backfield more than Notre Dame was on USC's offensive line. They were making more plays defensively and offensively than Notre Dame was. I thought that game they were going to run away with it. And that game just screamed 43-28 USC. Like one of those traditional Lincoln Riley Oklahoma wins. And for me at that point, I was ready to say Lincoln might have something here. Not necessarily a national title contender, not necessarily a team that's going to go out and do extra special things in the playoffs, but a team that he's accustomed to having at Oklahoma. Like this is the type of team that he's used to winning with. And the way they lost that game, it was like, oh, they're not there yet. Like,
yeah,
we talked about it pre-show. The Michigan game was such a big win for them, and you thought Lincoln's team might have taken a massive step forward. And then this week maybe it wasn't as big as we thought, because it was a step forward beating Michigan last week, but they're still not where they want to be as a physical, deep, defensive, offensive tandem yet. But honestly, both sides played well. That game was great.
Yeah, it was a fun game. It wasn't a dud of a day, but of a day that didn't have too many really great games. That was one of the few that was really fun to watch. It would have been really fun. USC had 3 turnovers on their final 5 drives, 4 if you count the turnover on downs. It would have been fun if they converted 1 or 2 of those and made it a 1-score game late. If you're Lincoln Riley, you got to be kicking yourself. This is still a very good Notre Dame team, but probably the worst Notre Dame team of the last couple of years under Marcus Freeman. I air quoted that if you're listening. It's still a phenomenal team. This is probably the closest the talent gap has been between the two teams. It's the final one for now. Didn't get it done. And then interesting, I had a friend at the game, so shout out Michael if you're listening. He sent me a video of the post game. USC players just stood there and then walked off. They didn't shake. Notre Dame, the entire bench went over to go shake hands. Nobody from USC came out. They all just immediately left. So maybe it was the rain. Why didn't you get out there? To lose the final, to be the team to not renew, and then to lose, to just walk out with no handshake or anything. That was pretty wild to me. But yeah, tough ending for USC in the rain in South Bend.
I was going to move on to the next game, but I have a question for you on that. How do you feel about that? We talked about it in the off season, but we said it's been since World War I that USC Notre Dame haven't. They missed the game during the pandemic season, and then they missed the game during World War II. But they've played every game since like the 20s or something. I forget what the exact stat is. Don't quote me on that, but it's been longer than you and I have been alive times 4 in terms of how many years in a row they played. But the argument for the USC side, which I completely understand, is hey, every year now we're going to go up on any given year. We could play Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. Why would we willingly add Notre Dame into that? But then the other side is like tradition matters, but at the same time, traditions die in every sport, and you got to get with the times. Does that make sense? Like, does my question make sense?
It does
in general?
make sense. Absolutely. Let me show you what I think of this.
If you're not watching on YouTube, this is a great reason to go online and watch us on YouTube. Jace just held up the Charmin Ultra Soft toilet paper. Was it the Ultra Soft at least?
Yeah,
or
the Ultra Soft. The Ultra Soft. Ultra Soft. I think that's Ultra Soft.
It was a picture of toilet paper.
I'm all for. As a fan, I love the competition. I love the games. And obviously, any fan's going to tell you they want it to play. But even from USC's perspective, I think it is very soft to, you're basically, and like, not you, like you as in USC, they're basically saying, we are not good enough to beat Notre Dame consistently. Therefore, we're going to dodge them. Like, that's what they are refusing to play it, because why schedule a hard team? Go win the game. Like, I don't, Michigan plays Ohio State in the Big Ten every year. Yeah, it's a conference team, but everyone else rotates. Like, you don't hear Michigan fans and Michigan, the university, complaining about doing that. They just say, all right, like, sure. And then they go and they've won 4 straight. It's, if you are part of a big rivalry like this, it's unfortunate for you in the sense that, yeah, you might lose this sometimes, but also you might win these sometimes, or at least I would think that you should have that mindset. And on the flip side, for every time you lose to Notre Dame, at least it's a quality loss. But every time you beat them, that's a big quality win. And I think that's so frustrating to me, to just back out because you don't want to risk the loss. It's the same thing with, I didn't like when Indiana did that. I understand, but I think it's soft. Like, it's uncompetitive and it's soft. And I love, like, if you know, like true football guys, they're so competitive. Like, very rarely would you see a true football guy back out of competition like this. And also, like, if you're a USC fan, I've seen them on like social media, like, always do the spot the ball, you know, like trying to act tough kind of comments. I'm like, you can't be a spot the ball team and then back out of a series because you're afraid you're losing too much. Like, if you're going to be a spot the ball team, then you got to be the kind of team that's going to renew a series, even if that means you might face a loss. I just think it's soft, but
I get it. The argument I've seen online is that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, when they play like University of South Dakota State, University, Tech. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the worst of the worst out of conference, instead of playing a legit team because they want the best chance to get in the playoff. Well, Notre Dame's not in your conference, so that has no impact on your ability to get into the playoff from your conference. So that means you're scared of your conference opponents. It has nothing to do with...
It means both.
It means both. Like, yes, if you lose to them, theoretically, you're understanding I might be fighting for an at-large spot, so I still need to limit the losses I have. This is from Heather Dinich of ESPN. Just an extra I saw on Twitter today. USC has suggested it may not continue the rivalry, which has been played 96 times dating back to 1926, and definitely not just because Lincoln Riley said it was making him look bad and be way more fun to play Portland State. Instead, USC feels that now that it's in the Big Ten, where it routinely gets to lose games to Illinois, Minnesota, and Maryland, there's really no need for higher profile losses out of conference. That is hook, line, and sinker. That is every reason that this rivalry needs to continue. It's a very good peek into the mind of, like, I understand the argument between Nick Saban or Kirby, a lot of SEC schools choosing to play softer schedules. Curt Cignetti is doing that right now at Indiana. They've canceled Power 4 conference games. Power 4 games for non-conference easier games. I understand the mindset. But I also fully believe, like you said, there's football guys out there the football guys won't back down from a game against Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Football guys, yeah. Like, football guys would want, like, the thing we said about, and we said this before before our show ever started, but people kept saying, do you ever want to, why would Kalen DeBoer want the Alabama job? Why would you ever want to be the guy that follows the guy who follows Nick Saban? And the conversation that Josh Pate had and that you and I had privately a lot was, college coaches, the best college coaches, have this alpha belief that, like, only I can be the guy. Only I can fix that. And the best of the best will go into these rivalry games and be like, I don't care. Spot the ball, like you said. Only I can make my team elite enough to go deal with my conference schedule and go play an elite team out of conference on the road in front of touchdown Jesus. Like,
yeah,
you're right. It's soft to me.
it is. The take. It's the same take I said when Kurt Signetti and Indiana dropped some Power 4 games. It's the same take I have every year about the SEC scheduling Mercer Week 13. It's soft. Does it make sense, and do I get why you're doing it logically? Absolutely. Yeah, it's giving yourself an advantage to go further in the sport, and I get that. But that doesn't change the fact that it's soft. Like, it can be logical and soft. Like, both things can be true. So I think, yes, it's logical. It increases their odds of making a playoff and going further. But I also think that it's soft. And especially in the case that it's like a historic rivalry. It's not even like
1926
where it was just like, yeah, 96 times since then. It's not even like Indiana's case where it was like not a rivalry. It was just like Virginia, we're taking this off the schedule. That's not a storied rivalry. Nobody's sitting there on the edge of their seat, circling that game to travel to every year. USC Notre Dame, that is like one of the biggest games of every single college football season that I can remember in my lifetime. It's one of my favorite games every year. The jersey matchup is awesome. The history is really cool. It's usually a really good game. So to back out of one like that just is really sad. I'll miss it. I hope they get it back on.
I'll say this. I understand the reason. I understand that, like, you don't want to add an extra travel cross country. You don't want, especially because you're already doing it a lot in your new conference. I understand the fact that, like, you want to make the fact that it easier for you to make the playoff as an at-large or as a conference champ. But some stuff shouldn't be lost like this. Like, this has been going on for 99 years now, 96 times in those 99 years. This should be happening, and Lincoln Riley and Chad Bowden and USC are the soft ones that are keeping it from happening. Before we continue, before we get too far down this USC rabbit hole, let's go to Vandy taking down LSU. This is a story. I think you got to talk about both sides. Vandy, they're a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if they are in a tier close to Alabama necessarily. Alabama showed that they can beat them. That was a good game in general. But Vandy and Diego Pavia can beat you if you don't have your fastball that day. And I think that's what they've proven. And they look damn scary. They're a playoff contender. They could make it. With that said, when do we start having this conversation about Brian Kelly?
There's you and I have been having it for a little while.
And this is, think about how many teams around the country, I understand NIL was involved, but convinced their juniors to come back as seniors this year, and it's flopped. Penn State, Clemson, fully flopped. Like Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, Kate Klubnik, maybe they would have been top 10 picks last year, but they would have been early round picks. They would be making more money in the NFL right now than they would have last year. And it's a risky tale in general, because we've seen Ohio State 2 years ago bring back all their seniors, and all of them got bigger NFL opportunities because of what they did on the field. They won a national championship. Michigan 3 years ago did the same thing. They won a national championship. They graduated and drafted like 13 guys. So there's pros and cons to it. But at what point, Brian Kelly's flaw of many, they wasted Jaden Daniels' Heisman year. They had a great year last year, but it was still not ready with Garrett Nussmeier. They bring him back for his senior year, expecting a phenomenal year. It's not all. I have to say, all is not lost. Like, they have one or two conference losses. All is not lost in terms of what they want to accomplish. But in general, the fact that they can't muster up offensive points with a senior quarterback and the talent that they have, that's an indictment on the program and on the coaching staff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They have no impressive win. Clemson, a 17-10 win at Clemson looked really good at the beginning of the year, even though it was an ugly game and neither of them looked good. But looking back on it, Clemson's no good. You were 35-point favorites against Louisiana Tech. You win by 16. You beat a Florida team 20-10. Again, you didn't look great in it, but at the time we thought that was a somewhat decent win. It's a very unimpressive win now. You beat Southeast Louisiana. You lose to Ole Miss. You beat a very, again, not very good South Carolina team 20-10, also kind of an ugly game. And then you lose by 7 on the road to Vanderbilt. They have done nothing to impress me. Of their wins, none of them impressed me, and they didn't look good in any of them. In their losses, they haven't looked that good either, and they didn't impress me then. By the eye test and the metrics of okay, how have they played and what's their resume, the fact that they're still ranked is just beyond ridiculous to me. This is a team that should be nowhere near the rankings. I think you have to have at least one win where I'm like, all right, I can see the vision here. For me to at least accept you in the rankings, they have not done that yet. They played Texas A&M this week, and then they play at Alabama coming off of a bye in 2 weeks. I don't like their odds in that game. I don't know how I feel about their odds against Texas A&M. If you drop both of those, you risk going 5-4 heading into Arkansas. They do have an easier end of the season, but 5-4 post Alabama game, I can guarantee you is not what they promised Nussmeier and these seniors that they brought all back from last year.
It's a conversation we were having last week of LSU fans. We're kind of just in that Oregon fan 2021 mode. Is somehow we're surviving, but they know the shoe's going to drop. They know that they're frauds. They know that they're good enough to beat teams, but something is broken is the wrong word, because broken is what we use for Penn State, but something's off. They can't run the ball at all. It can't be, your run game can't be broken if it just was never on. If it was never fixed in general. So
yeah,
they were having issues in general there. I don't know, man. I think year after year we've seen LSU and Brian Kelly show us a talented team that's been wasted from here on out. So I don't know how much more. If they go 5-4, it might be done, right? If they're 5-4, he might be done at LSU. I think the buyout's $54 million. It's a lot of money to pay, but at LSU, they will pay that.
Yeah, they have the money, and I promise they care enough to not. $54 million is worth, I think, to LSU. If that means they actually can watch good football again, I think they would.
Right. We'll talk plenty about coaches just shortly. Cleaning up a couple more games. Louisville picked off Carson Beck 4 times on Friday. They won 24-21. Jeff Brom, I think, is 5-2 against top 5 teams. By the way, Penn State, if you're looking for the opposite of James Franklin, I think Jeff Brom's your guy. He wins against top 5 teams. Unfortunately for Penn State, he just left the Big Ten team to become Louisville's coach, because I'm pretty sure family and Louisville are involved in the Brom family. So I think that's a little bit more close-knit ties than just taking the Louisville job.
I have a question for you quickly. What's the rules, if any, on having 2 head coaches? What if you had James Franklin coach all of your we're supposed to beat you games, and then you just sub them out for Jeff Brom in the big games, and he comes in and coaches those week leading up to a big game? Can you do that? Is that allowed?
I don't think anything's banned.
Try out.
I don't think anything's banned. We just heard about how UNC's GM was in Saudi Arabia over the summer looking for funding for the UNC program. I don't think anything of that note. You can technically hire 2 head coaches if you want to pay the money. I don't know. The rule, that would be actually pretty fascinating in general. I guess the question back to you is, who hires the coaches? Does James Franklin hire the coaches because he's shown he can, and he can do a really good job of hiring the right guys, but they just don't perform well for him?
That's a good, maybe you have a GM situation. Maybe Stanford drops a bag on James Franklin, or drops a bag to bring Jeff Brom, and then utilizes the 6 years of your situation with Penn State and kind of lowball James Franklin a little bit, because he's going to get paid anyways. You might be okay with it. Pay Jeff Brom, bring the 2 of them in, say, Jeff, you get What is Jeff Brom a defense or offensive guy? I actually don't even know. I feel like at Purdue he's just the upset guy. I don't even know what his like
He's been the upset
background would
guy.
be.
I just know him as like his teams are damn tough, damn strong. And if you're
Maybe
not
you just
coming
ask
in
him,
with
like,
your
if you have an
fastball, you're
analyst,
gonna get beat.
like in
Yeah.
Moneyball, like, who's your Jonah Hill? Like who's the guy that's telling you all these, that's getting you beaten up on all these good teams? Bring him in the room, and then James Franklin can fill the rest of it.
You know who could use a Jeff Brom? Mario Cristobal, because
Classic
I mean,
Mario disaster class.
you don't know how. I mean, I'm sure you were the same way. You don't know how many texts from non-Oregon people I got on Friday about Mario's disaster class, just because we've made it known, and Oregon fans in general have made it known about how Mario will lose 1 or 2 games every single season, no matter how good his program is, for no reason. I'll give Jeff Brom and Louisville a lot of credit. They made every play they needed to. Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions. It's kind of hard to pin this loss on Mario when your quarterback throws 4 picks, especially when you were driving down the field in the fourth quarter under a minute left to tie the game or win it. The only part you can place on Mario is what you were texting me on Friday is run the ball, tie the game. It's just like it's the same thing of like we talk about like some alpha coaches of they just want to end the game. They don't want to go to overtime. So they were throwing the ball. At that point in my head, I'm like, why are we throwing the ball to the flat? There's 26 seconds left. You got 2 timeouts. I get it.
Yeah.
But Carson Beck, we keep saying like one of the benefits they have with him is he might not be super special, but he's a super senior quarterback who's been in the playoff. He has experience in big games. Of all things you don't expect from a quarterback like that is 4 interceptions in a single.
Yeah. And it was a 1st and 10 play call where they were trying to throw it after the game. Yeah. I don't see the vision there. Like we were saying, there are times where coaches need to get aggressive and there are times where you don't need to be. 1st and 10, when you have a timeout, I don't think getting aggressive right then and there was the play. You were running the ball pretty well too. And you have like, if you had a bad offensive line and your running back was banged up, like you're Miami. Like you have one of, if not the best O-line in the country.
The best.
At least, yeah. If you get to a 3rd and 8 and it's going to be a 50-yard field goal, which I mean they're still within that range anyways. Sure, I get throwing the ball, but 1st and 10 to the flat. It was kind of a weird route. Carson Beck, I feel like Twitter overblew it for sure. Twitter was trying to say Carson Beck threw his wide receiver under the bus. If you watch the clip in full, he did not throw his wide receiver under the bus. He said we had a miscommunication. You know, that's what happened, I guess. Like clearly, like Carson clearly threw it to a spot. The wide receiver is clearly going to a different spot. Could have been both their faults, one of them. He just said we had a miscommunication. Just a bad play call, bad decision making on a 1st and 10, 36 seconds left. And that is what Oregon fans have been saying. That is the classic Mario Cristobal. He's good for a minimum of 1 a year. Play a team we have no business losing to, and he's going to make just some bonehead decision late in the game that's going to cost you. And that was it. Louisville gets it done, which opens the door in the ACC a little bit. I put an interesting note. Tied for 1st in the ACC. I think we're all aware of Georgia Tech this year. The Virginia Cavaliers are now in the driver's seat in the ACC, undefeated, and I put their schedule down in our rundown. Their final 5 ACC games are UNC, Cal, Wake Forest, Duke, and Virginia Tech. That is
they beat Duke.
Very winnable games.
They beat Duke. They might be in against Georgia Tech. Miami could be on the odd man looking out in the ACC title game picture. That's crazy.
Which would be crazy. What was Virginia's odds? Do we still have our? Oh man, I wish we had the rundown from like when we did our ACC, review
years ago.
I would love to know the preseason odds on Virginia to win the ACC because it's gotten a big boost. Which something interesting I noted too. Tony Elliott, played at Clemson back in. Oh, we were really little, but he was a wide receiver at Clemson. Started his career at Clemson, a wide receiver coach. I remember him as like their wide receiver co-OC when they had like DeAndre Hopkins and all those stud receivers like Taj Boyd, quarterback that era of Clemson football. This could be a fast track of Dabo Sweeney, his way out of Clemson, and a Tony Elliott potential resurgence if he really does finish this season off with Virginia and take some places. I could see a world where he becomes the next Clemson guy. Maybe a little reunited.
That's really fast. I don't know how I would feel about that necessarily. I think Tony Elliott in many ways was a is he on the hot seat guy and entering the season, because for what it's worth, the guy's had a really hard tenure at Virginia. Not only have they like slowly rebuilt, I think a couple of years ago, unfortunately, there was a tragedy where multiple kids on his team were shot and killed.
Yeah.
He's had not just football losses. It's been a really hard tenure for him at Virginia. So the fact that there are at this point, you're just extremely stoked for the guy and stoked for the program that they've recovered mentally and physically, and they're at this level. The weird fact, I actually, before I get to that, I agree. I actually think it would be kind of fun to see him as potentially an option for Clemson. I think Clemson would try to go big fish hunting a little bit more than like an alum, but that would be fun. The weird stat for you that I've dug up, and I kind of realized this a couple weeks ago. They lost to NC State week 2, September 6th. They lost 35-31. That wasn't a conference game. Both teams just agreed to play each other non-con. So it doesn't count against their conference schedule.
I think it was Kansas State, Arizona earlier this season.
Yeah.
I was watching that.
This season or last,
same thing. It was earlier this year. I was actually with one of my good friends, her nephew. He's at Kansas. He's a student at Kansas State, and we were watching that game, and I was like, "Oh, you could still win this and win a Big 12 game." And he was like, "No, it's actually because they scheduled this when Arizona was in the Pac-12. They honored it. They kept the game. It's not a conference game. They just made sure, like, okay, you're not going to play again later in the year." But yeah, that was a non-conference conference game, and I did not know Virginia had one too. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean that's why they're 3-0 in conference and 6-1 overall. Is that one was an ACC team, but it just doesn't count because they schedule as a non-conference game. All right, off the rails a little bit, but hey, the more you know. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that is fun.
The game that broke my heart the most, I think, yesterday was Texas Tech and their abysmal performance against ASU. But I don't know. I think I find myself in this like weird space in the Big 12 where I just love too many teams. Because you and I were like the founding members of the Kenny Dillingham fan club at ASU. We were such big hype men for Kenny. And then now this year, right. And now this year, Texas Tech is the new hot thing. So we're all over Texas Tech. And so I don't know. I feel embarrassed that last week I said that was my number one easiest, no sweat pick, Texas Tech to cover 7.5 on ASU. And ASU walks in there with a recovering from injury Sam Levitt and not only wins the game, I know it says 26-22. ASU controlled that game for most of it. And Texas Tech had to claw back to make it that close. ASU, you did a lot.
Yeah, they time of possession 37-23 essentially. ASU dominated that game, 9 of 21 on third downs. That was the first time we saw Texas Tech's offense look human. The ASU defense really stepped up, and that's also scary. The fact that Arizona State's defense is stepping up and slowing down and winning a football game for them, their offense is going to, when their offense operates at the level it should, with Jordan Tyson, Sam Levitt, they're one of the better offenses in the country. And they didn't even play incredibly well as an offense. So to get a win against number 7 Texas Tech by kind of leaning on your defense, that's scary. And I think if you're the rest of the Big 12, that's a watch out moment for you. But if you're BYU, you're Cincinnati, those are our two front runners that control their own destiny. They don't play each other, and they're both 4-0 in the conference. So you're before the season, if you thought BYU Cincinnati would be your top 10 matchup, Big 12 championship game, I think we would have thought you were crazy. We would have asked what you were on, but you would have been on a magic ball, crystal ball pill or whatever the hell you would call it, because you'd be correct. BYU being incredibly underrated, as well as Cincinnati. I thought people has been overlooking them. When they lost Luke Fickell, a lot of people just kind of writ them off. I think they thought it was kind of like a one and done fluky thing. Sorsby's got this team. He's a great quarterback, and this is one of the better teams in the Big 12 that has a pretty favorable schedule moving forward in the Big 12.
Yeah. You said everything I need to there. I want to bring up, you mentioned Luke Fickell. We're going to get into coaches in a second. The last 27 Wisconsin drives, punt, interception, punt, 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 end of game, punt, punt, downs, punt, punt, turnover on downs, fumble, punt, interception, interception, punt, field goal, punt, interception, punt, 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 punt. And I think I just ran out of space on the tweet to read more. Yeah.
What?
That is bad. They play good
When's
teams,
their
but at the
last
same
touchdown?
time,
How many offensive touchdowns do they have this year? That's
I'll find that out.
Trivia question
Why don't
for the
we-
listener still here. Trivia question. How many offensive touchdowns does Wisconsin have? It's like the Aflac question. I'll have the answer for you here shortly. Take a guess, though, because it's going to be awful if that's their last however many drives. You say 27?
So they lost to Ohio State 34-0 on Saturday. They lost 30 last week to Iowa. They lost 24-10 Michigan on October 4th. They scored a rushing touchdown, and that was the last offensive touchdown they've had, October 4th. That was
horrible.
As of this recording, 15 days ago. As of the release of the show, it'll be 16 days ago that they have scored their last touchdown. Let's get into that. And I know we have games to finish out cleanup crew, but we can meld that in. There's a lot of coaches on the chopping block, and honestly, today, two more coaches got fired today. And by the time everyone's listening to this, 2 more coaches got fired on Sunday. People get what I'm saying. I don't know. I think we woke up this morning and everyone was saying, like, you guys probably should be just sitting on your couch. There's not going to be a lot of time in between these firings. There should be a ton happening. So far this season, I think 9 FBS coaches have been fired. That's James Franklin, Penn State, Jay Norvell at Colorado State, Trent Bray, Oregon State, UAB's Trent Dilfer, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State, Sam Pittman, Arkansas, Deshaun Foster, UCLA, Brent Pry, Virginia Tech, Troy Taylor, Stanford. And the 9th one just got fired today, Billy Napier, fired as the Florida Gators head coach. They owe him his buyout, and then I think it's like a Billy Napier day for the next 6 or so years for like $2 million a year or whatever. How are we feeling about the Billy thing? Let's start with Billy in general. Did he get a fair shake? Was it time for him to go? I mean, I don't even know. I feel silly asking that question because it was time for him to go, right?
It was time. Yeah, I don't even think I was of the group that didn't think he should have been the Florida Gators head coach coming into this season.
He should have been fired last year.
Yeah, they gave him a chance. As we had mentioned coming into the year, we've seen that we know what you're going to get out of a Billy Napier team. Everything that we previewed could go wrong for Florida went wrong for Florida. You can make the excuses. He's had injuries. He's had players leave the NFL. There's a dozen coaches that were hired in the same class as him 4 years ago that have dealt with injuries, that have dealt with players leaving, that have dealt with everything that he's dealt with and have come out much more successful than the track he's on. Like, Florida fans, you have to remember, you are Florida. Like, you are a big time name brand program. Like, we can't just keep going 7-5 and saying, well, wait till next year. Like, how many more years do you have to wait? And I think rightfully so, your boosters get impatient. I'm giving you so much money to run this program. We have all this talent that came in last year. We can't lose them because our head coach can't perform. We also want to bring in talent. And there's going to be a lot of good head coaches on the market. And Florida, similar to Penn State now that they're open, immediately becomes one of the more attractive destinations for a head coach that's trying to move up. So I think you put your name in the hat. But it was time. Long answer there. It was time.
No, great answer. I think what people don't remember is last year, and I apologize to Jace more than anyone because he's heard me talk about this plenty. But last year, Billy Napier was fired week 3. It was known within the Florida community that he was fired. The athletic director was the only one who wasn't aware of it. And he was the one who stood up to a couple boosters, and the couple boosters backed Billy, saying Billy Napier and the team, they bounced back and they said, okay, I'll go hire a play calling offensive coordinator. And he gave them a couple conditions to keeping his job for last season. they bounce back and they win a good amount of games. And the way they finished the season last year gave a lot of people confidence in Billy Napier, DJ Lagway, and the Florida team going into this year. What everyone seemed to miss was what guarantees do we have of not the same overall thing happening? Because Florida had a tough schedule. Florida had a really hard schedule this season. And you and I were on it. In the summer, our first batch of hate that we got from any fan base as a podcast was from Florida fans because we were just honest. We were just saying, you have such a hard schedule. You have a good team. But if anything's not buttoned up the way it wasn't at the beginning of last year, it's going to go south. And it went south quickly. Dan Mullen, it's actually a really good case study of what I was saying last week about Penn State firing James Franklin. Not that it was the wrong decision once again, but if you are going to fire a guy, you better have a plan as successful James Franklin. Because Florida fired Dan Mullen 34-15 as the Florida Gators head coach. Billy Napier, after winning on Saturday, improved to 22-23 in 4 years as the Gators head coach. He went 12-16 against SEC opponents, 5-17 against ranked opponents, 0-14 away from home. He refused to give up play
away from home.
That's what this article says.
Goodness. That is
right. He declined to give up his play calling duties when he agreed to do so. And, he was hired from Louisiana. He was a really good coach at that level. I'm sure he can be a good coach elsewhere, but at the same time, it ran its course last year at Florida, and they were just Scott Strickland and the Florida Boosters were trying to hold on and hope that something would be different this year than it was last year. And I think early on they realized nothing's different than last year, other than everyone's a year old.
Yeah, he was a part of that like Alabama Saban coaching squad. I think he's probably going to have to start fresh. If you're Billy Napier, I think either lower. If I were him, I don't know if I'd want to stick around in the SEC. I think it might be best to take a break. I think he's going to have to start fresh, though. Probably go to a little bit lower, take a step down from the SEC, maybe like an ACC team, and try and build that up to rebuild his credibility. He has a very impressive pass, like beyond the Alabama team. Didn't translate it at Florida. It'll be interesting to see where he moves next. I don't know if I think it helps him, the pandemonium that has occurred among like coaching and job openings. I think so many people are going to be looking for coaches. So I think he deserves a shot. Like I don't think he's the world's worst coach that I've ever seen, but he certainly wasn't doing Florida any favors. And I'm glad they made that decision just for their fan base in terms of that. Also, I have an answer for our flag for discussion trivia question to our listeners. Wisconsin, this season, they've played 7 football games. They have 12 offensive touchdowns in 7 games, and 6 of those 12 came in week 2 against Middle Tennessee. Outside of that game, they have 6 touchdowns in the other 6 games that they have played, and none in the last 2 games. So that is brutal.
So that would be an easy transition to our next coach. I think one thing I want to finish about Billy, you're right. He's proven in the past that he's a good coach. I think a lot of people just got thrown off by the fact that he wouldn't give off play calling duties, and his answers at the podium became a little smug, a little arrogant, a little defensive. I texted this to you earlier. I'm shocked at Hard Rock Bet's Twitter post from earlier today. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, they gave the top 5 landing spots for Billy Napier. And normally when like a sports book tweets it out, it's like odds. Number 1's UNC. Well, UNC's not open. I don't think they're going to open unless Bill Belichick gets the job. Next year they might open. Number 2 is Nebraska. That's only if Matt Rule leaves. Number 3 is UCLA. That, I guess you could argue that that's open. He would take it. Seems like a pretty sad move for both sides. Number 4 is UAB. How do you go from 3 Power 4 programs to UAB? No offense to UAB, but like you would think that with all the P4 jobs that are opening, that there would be another option other than UAB. And I'll give you $5 to try to guess number 5, you at home, and I'll give you 10 seconds to do it. All right, 10 seconds is done. It's too fast. Hard Rock Bet put number 5 as Publix, the supermarket chain. Like
a deli sandwich slicer. Get Billy Napier doing reps in the morning, cutting my deli meats.
The disrespect.
He would get paid $2 million a year to cut deli meats at Publix. I'd do that. Are you kidding me? $2 million a year. I'll be the bet. Your meat will be so perfectly, consistently slight. Your cheese would be perfect. $2 million a year. Sign me
He would
up.
get paid $2 million a year regardless.
That's true. You could go drink pina coladas on the beach and still get paid $2 million a year.
I'm just gonna say the disrespect from Hard Rock Bet, but also how funny is that? That's amazing.
I believe that's a Florida-based like betting too, so they were probably excited for this to fall through.
Miami Hard Rock Bet, yeah. Let's just quickly go over other programs. We just mentioned Luke Fickell. That feels imminent now. If it doesn't happen now, it'll probably happen at some point this year. Wisconsin doesn't have a pulse. Like I hate to say it, Wisconsin has been shut out their last 2 games, and at first I was trying to rationalize in my head of Luke Fickell has lost his starting quarterback week 1 or 2 in both of his years in the last 2 years of Wisconsin. At some point, you can't like discount how hard that is for a head coach, but at the same time, you can't be this bad. And 2 weeks ago in a post-game presser, he said that he was asked, like, in how many ways is your program better than it is now? And he said, I can't think of one, or something along those lines. So
at least he was honest.
Luke Fickell seems like he's on his way out.
Yeah, he needs to be. I don't have much
Do
more
you
to
have
add.
No. I feel like you have stuff on Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I think Hugh Freeze probably ran his course. I think that Mizzou game might have been that Hugh Freeze seems like they might wait till the season ends just because they have lower expectations than some of these other teams and programs have. I just feel like Auburn is a program that can win. We've seen it obviously in our lifetimes, and he's just not cutting it. But I also part of me struggles with the Hugh Freeze one because I actually think of the coaches that are on the block, he's actually one of the better coaches. Like I still have faith that he could make something work. Yeah, I just think
absolutely
the fit that he has at Auburn right now is not working. I think I don't know if it's a roster construction. His coaching style does not fit the Auburn roster. And as a head coach, it is your job to build a roster. So if you're not building a roster that fits the style of play you want to run, that's also partially on you. This feels like this feels like at the end of the season, there might be like a mutual parting of ways. And I think Auburn is better off for it. And I think Hugh Freeze is better off for it. But this doesn't feel like Luke Fickell's situation was kind of ugly. It used to be like a respectable program, and it's the worst program in the Big Ten. And there's not a pulse, like you said.
Right.
I think Auburn Hugh Freeze might be a looming parting of ways. That's kind of a more happy, situation where Hugh Freeze goes off to do better things. Auburn goes off and hires somebody who's a little bit better of a fit there. And both of them end up happy. But that is a name I expect to be cut loose here within the next couple months.
You asked me maybe 3 weeks ago if it was time for him. Well, will he last until the end of the year? And I personally told you no. I mean, I told you there's no shot that he gets fired because I thought that this year was show a pulse and next year compete for something. And if you don't prove that you're great next year, then that's when you're on the hot seat, you're on the chopping block, you're fired. They're 0-4 in SEC play for the second straight year. That's not what went into my mind when you asked me that question. I didn't think they were going to start out 0-4 in SEC play. And that's a big deal. Now, my question is for the Auburn Boosters, how many coaches are you paying right now? Because you're probably still paying Brian Harsin. You're probably still paying Gus Malzahn because you fired him the year after you gave him an extension. Can you pay 4 coaches at a time? If you fire Hugh Freeze, you're going to have to go pay for someone else. Like, it's a joke, but it's also absolutely true. No, if Auburn wants one of the top tier coaches, they're going to have to pay top tier money for it and pay a buyout for Hugh Freeze and pay for Hugh Freeze's the rest of his contract.
Maybe you take Gus and Harsin, bring them back on, and then you have all 3 head coaches together. Maybe this is the Jeff Brown, James Franklin trio situation where you bring them all in. However, they all have similar pitfalls in that none of them won big games, which is the opposite. So maybe just don't do that actually, because you might.
Hey, if you bring Cam Newton, if you give Gus Malzahn Cam Newton, he can win as an offensive coordinator at least.
I could too. Yeah,
I can't. So many people are linking Gus to jobs, and I just don't know if he wants one. I feel like he's happy as an OC now. But I mean, he's an offensive. He's a coach he's a legendary high school Arkansas head coach. Maybe if Arkansas's NIL budget upticks a little bit, he's going to be like, okay, I'll go home and finish my career there. After we talked about Hugh Freeze, Luke Fickell, another ugly situation, Florida State, Mike Norvell. We started the season saying they might be ACC contenders. Here's another trivia question. Maybe you can find it, or our listeners can find it. How many ACC games has Mike Norvell won in the last 24 months? Is it one? Realistically,
he's 0 for this year.
And I don't think he won one last year.
No, he was 0 for last year.
So I think I actually have to find.
The year they went crazy, he obviously had like 8 or how many they play? 8.
Yeah.
It's probably been 2 years. It has probably been 2 years.
I think I saw a tweet recently that was like the last time Mike Norvell won an ACC game was when he was 42. He's 44 now.
Yeah, that's just, you just can't be having that.
The sad part is, like, I know for a fact Mike Norvell is a good head coach. I know for a fact he's a smart guy and he's just a decent human being. Hugh Freeze, I'm sure he's an extremely smart football coach, and he's done things that he's paid for. Like, he was fired from Ole Miss for a reason. But my joke to you for a while has always been the Hugh Freeze situation at Auburn started out. If your situation as a head coach starts out with the program saying you're not allowed to control your own Twitter account because we're afraid of what you might post on it or who you might contact on it, then that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So by all accounts, Mike Norvell, great head coach, great human. That might have run its course. I don't expect him, if he does get fired, I don't expect him to be jobless for very long.
No, I think he'd be a hot name. I think he was the epitome of a coach that tried to live and die by the portal. And we saw the heights that it can reach 2 years ago. We've seen the low that live and die by the portal can reach last year. And we're kind of seeing the low end of it this year. They have that impressive Bama win week 1, but I think you caught Bama at the perfect time. I think if they play any other time in the year, they get boat raced. And then, yeah, it's just not winning in the ACC is bad. That there's no excuses for that one, especially some of the losses that they've had have been pretty embarrassing. We've seen Dabo Sweeney be the anti-transfer portal kind of coach. We've seen where that's led him. We've seen the other end where live and die by the transfer portal, where that can get you the middle ground, I suppose. Just like most things is probably the choice with the portal there, but kind of interesting to see those two ends in that conference.
I want to ask you about 2 more coaches. If there's anything after that, feel free to talk about it. Shane Beamer, South Carolina. The season started with so much hope. Is he angling for the VT job, the VOTEC job, or is South Carolina generally that bad right now?
I think he's been incredibly disappointing, and I could see him at a Virginia Tech. It would be a little bit of a step down for him, but I think with Lenore Sellers regressing, Dylan Stewart not having the year he was expected, yet 5-star Nick Harbor, who you haven't really developed. I don't know if Shane Beamer has much to like point to of like, here's what I've done at South Carolina. He's recruited well. That's the one thing he's done, but he hasn't developed those recruits much at all. And if you're not developing your recruits, they stop coming at some point. So I think Shane Beamer is he's in the spot Billy Napier was in like 2 years ago, maybe, where it was like, or maybe even last year, where it was, you have to turn around fast or else you're gone. I feel like that's probably where Shane Beamer is at.
And then I completely agree with you. I don't know if he's fireable right now, because 3 weeks ago we were saying, is he going to leave South Carolina for the Virginia Tech job? So I don't think he's like denigrated his status there that much, but it certainly isn't up to par with what we expected from him or the program this season, with how Lenore Sellers was in my Heisman top 5. I don't think he's anyone's top 50 right now. Maybe top 50. I don't know. The other coach I want to ask you about, James Franklin. We talked about him plenty. We talked about him a lot over text yesterday. but he went on game day. So that's a conversation to have about our reaction to that. But I've seen Florida State fans say bring in James Franklin. There are already programs around the country who are saying we might hate his like how he acts like a politician. We might hate that he might not win the big ones, but at least he'll stabilize the program. And that was the entire argument you and I were trying to make the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think Florida State is a really good fit for a team that it's a program that has the NIL, the buy-in, the boosters, the funding, the care, the brand to become an elite program again. And I think James Franklin would be the good stabilizer of like, he's going to raise right now, your floor is abysmal, as we saw last year and we're seeing currently. I think if he can get Florida State back to being where Penn State is now, and maybe let's say he goes on to never win the big game there again. I think Florida State would take that in a heartbeat, considering what they've seen the last 2 seasons. And if maybe they reach a point where they need to move on, and maybe James Franklin just becomes the program builder. But I think that would be a good fit for him. I think that's a program he could turn around pretty quickly, especially in the ACC. I also think that's a good fit because you don't make him play the big game quite as much. Like I was also thinking, what if he went to like an Auburn or a Florida? My fear with that would be he would have to play 6 or 7 big games a year, in which case you run the risk of like never building. But if he goes to a Florida State and you only play 2, maybe 3 big games a year, you can win 10 games. And that's how you stabilize your program, get it healthy again. And then who knows, maybe James Franklin does figures out how to win big games. And then you've really struck gold with him. So Florida State, that's a great call out. I actually really like that fit for him and for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's disappointing because that would include like one of my favorite coaches around the country getting fired, Mike Norvell. But at the same time, I can't defend a lot of the things Norvell has done, right? Not that he's done like heinous things, but more of the fact that like
done much on the field,
the building process, you're just doubling down the way they're building. And I've seen I saw an article today that says like firing Norvell would amount to about $100 million investment from Florida State boosters in the athletic department, because it would cost about 50-something million to fire him, pay him out. They gave him an extension before last season, the season that they went like 2-10, and then you have to pay out Malzahn. You have to pay out the rest of his coaching staff, and then you have to go buy someone else out and bring him in. So it would probably amount to be about $100 million investment from your athletic department. Will that happen? I don't know. But you know who would love to see it happen? Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal would be like, I got hired the same year as, what's his name, as Billy Napier, and like the year after as Mike Norvell, and I've outlasted all of them in my state. The Mario Cristobal would love it.
Well, yeah. Then he would just need Alex Golesh to take a job out of the state of Florida. And then he can really feel comfortable about his position in Florida.
He'll bring in Byron Brown as a transfer. Any other coaches you want to talk about? Or anything you want to expand?
I think we've hit all the coaches. Dabo Sweeney was one. His buyout's way too high right now for them to move on. And he's done too much for your program. Something to note about him, at the end of next season, so going into the 2027 year, that buyout goes from $60 million to $36.5 million. Still a lot of money, much more stomachable, if that's even a word. If it's not, I just made it up. You know what I'm saying, though?
Easier to stomach.
That could be an interesting situation in a year or two if he really doesn't figure it out, and like this really is the downfall of it. That could be something to watch, and that gives Tony Elliott an extra year or two to prove that this wasn't a fluke. In which case, but we'll see.
Okay, here's actually a question for you, and we've been on for an hour 28, so I'm challenging you to go quick. So far, right now, some major programs are open. If you are a top-tier coaching candidate and you had Penn State, Auburn, LSU, Florida State, and Florida open, rank them. What do you want as a candidate in terms of like
Florida State 1? Seminoles 1.
Really?
I like being in the ACC. I think you can immediately compete without much from day one. Cool branding, cool school. I like the ACC dominance you have there. I would probably go Penn State 2. I like also Big Ten. Big Ten's just always being a top-heavy conference. It allows you to compete immediately for conference championships and going to the playoff. And then I'd probably go Florida 3. really cool job, great gig. The only knockdown from the other two would be you're in the SEC, and like the uphill battle of getting to the top of the SEC is just so difficult. I think it's hard to sustain a job there. And then I'd probably go Auburn for good history, good story, but I think it is hard to be like second fiddle in the state of Alabama. I just think you're always seen as like little brother kind of vibe. So I just wouldn't want to join a program where that's the case. And then what's the last one? I think there was a fifth one that I'm not throwing in.
We said Penn State, Auburn,
LSU. Bump LSU up to number. Put LSU in front of Penn State. I'm going to put that at 2. It should be 1, I guess. LSU is a very attractive job. I guess I have a soft spot for Florida State. When I was a kid, that was my first ever NCAA 2010 dynasty. I always thought they were so cool. LSU probably goes number 1 though, 1 or 2. I do like the idea of throwing an ACC you can dominate though. That's as a coach in today's world where you have to be successful. You get 3 years to prove yourself in today's world. It's a lot easier to prove yourself in the ACC when you've got 8 baked in wins versus if you join the SEC and get the Billy Napier treatment and have to play 7 ranked teams every year, you just might not ever have a chance to get your footing, which stinks.
Well, also just real quick, what you said, I first said when you said Florida State number 1, I was like, are you sure? And then you said like you like me in the ACC. They're not only in the ACC, but they'll have options for whenever the ACC, knock on wood, implodes. Like Florida State's one of those programs that will end up in the SEC or the Big Ten. That is unfortunate. We have to get into that conversation, but that's going to happen at some point. My answer, regardless, would be LSU number 1. Everyone else can figure it out. If LSU wants my job, I'll get paid SEC money, and I'll have SEC aura. Brian Kelly just has 0. Like he has negative aura that like he crushes anyone wanting to be an LSU Tiger. I think like before even with Coach O, that like so much was wrong with the program. It was really cool watching the LSU brand. You know, like right now it's like there's nothing cool as an outsider about LSU. So
maybe I got recency biased to myself with maybe I need to like go back and watch like 2019 LSU clips for 10 minutes and then be like, oh yeah, LSU won for sure. But I think the auralist Brian Kelly killed, because in my head I was like, oh, Florida State, that's kind of the coolest job. I think because Brian Kelly killed what is normally a really cool LSU.
Right. No, that's probably true.
His doing this shit on the podium with the recruits, the least cool thing I've ever seen.
I apologize to you and our viewers and my fiance for this taking so long. I was watching that video today. Do you think he planned that? Like, do you think he knew what that meant?
I think that was never
a part of the
plan.
Yeah. For anyone at home, we're talking about the notorious. Sorry, for anyone at home, we're talking about the notorious Brian Kelly with a recruit on a rotating podium, photo shoot video of him like taking his finger across his eyes with like the 1 and 2. I don't know. Like, there's no way that guy was like, I'm going to do this move and surprise everybody with it.
Here's my take. My genuine, I've thought about this before. I think that they use that little podium thing to put like they'll have an athlete on there and they'll take cool pictures of like just the athlete on that podium, right? I think that Brian Kelly was like, wait, hold on. Like he had his own idea where in his head, he was like, it's going to be so cool if I get up there with this guy. So he gets up there with him and is like, the photographer of the photo shoot's probably like, okay, you know, not really going along with it. And I can see a world Brian goes, no, trust me, this will be really cool. Trust me. And he makes that video and it's just the most awkward, weird, uncomfortable recruitment video photo you've ever seen. You can tell the kid's uncomfortable. You could tell it was half-assed by everybody but Brian Kelly. And you could see it in his eyes. He's just so proud of himself. Like, I am so freaking cool. I think it was literally like Brian Kelly was like, no, we are doing this. I have a vision. And they were all just kind of like, okay, I guess. Like, I'm not going to say no to Brian Kelly. And they just took the videos and that's what we got.
The funniest part is you're probably absolutely right. He definitely just thought it would be cool. He definitely wasn't supposed to be on there with the recruit.
There's not enough room for the two of them. He's like so awkward and he's so much smaller than him. He's like awkwardly like hugging his leg. It's weird. It's a weird video.
All right. My camera's going blurry, so I think that's a sign that we should wrap it up anyways. We're an hour 34 in. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in, listened. about 2 hours ago, Jace texted me. He's like, "Oh, this might be a shorter show." We went longer than most shows, so that's just how much fun we have doing this. If you like what you heard, if you like everything, make sure you're following us on TikTok at flag4discussion, on Twitter at for discussion, or on YouTube at flag for discussion written out, and everywhere you get your podcast at flag for discussion written out. Oh, my camera's back to not being blurry. Thank you so much for tuning in. Look, week 8's coming up. We're gonna hit a parlay one of these days, one of these weeks, Chase.
We're due again.
Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. From myself, Farbud Merkazi, I hit my mic. From myself, Farbud Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flag for Discussion.